First of all, thanks to Satish for giving such a passionate start to the day and then for making such a strong business case for DNI. Thank you so much, Satish. It feels great to be in a room full of people after almost 2 years, and I can see the energy, I can see the smiles on the faces. I would also like to thank the organizers. First of all, commend them for putting up a panel which looks very diverse as well. So they got that right. We not only have good gender diversity on the panel, we also have good cognitive diversity coming from different backgrounds, right from technology to manufacturing to life spaces to fashion. I think today the fact that we need to embrace and be ambassadors of DNI is well established. Satish laid down the business cause for this. What needs to be seen is it just a nice buzzword? Is it a catchphrase? Is it something that we want to write about in our annual reports and put on our websites? Or does it go deep down at a ground level where DNI is actually imbibed and practiced in the companies? And is it really making the impact that it is supposed to do? Is something that, you know, I believe we will discuss today, and for that I couldn't have asked for a better and more distinguished panel than what we have today. So if I can start with Sanjeev. Sanjeev, you know, for you as head of Being Human, what is the business case for DNI? You know, why do it?
Okay, see, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure people have heard about Being Human, but how much do you actually visit the stores? I don't know. For all the women, we have launched our women wear, so you can go and check it out. But just to answer your question, look, for us as Being Human, diversity and inclusion is a part of our life. Now, I don't know how many of you all know this, but every single store of ours has a specially abled person. There are 2 of them who work in every store. When we are talking about diversity, you know, first of all, we don't get this whole diversity piece connected to business straight away. No. What we do is we basically you know, try to get a complete diverse culture happening within our organization and then link it to certain goals that they devise, the people there devise. So for example, so in my stores, when I have these specially abled people working, and I just heard Satish say something right now, that, you know, there was a visually impaired person whose heightened sense of smell kind of became, you know, I mean, he became a champion there. So let me tell you, I have 39 people across all my stores who are, you know, they are deaf and dumb, and they cannot hear, they cannot talk, especially abled people. They are my, every month on month, they are actually the store champions. You can't even imagine the level of customer service that they can actually deliver, and the amount of eye for detail is so high that when I compare them with people with about 18 years of experience in retail operations, they surpass them. So you have to understand, you know, everything, I mean, at least for us, everything cannot be connected to business. And it's not that we are doing a CSR here, sorry, no. We believe in it because we are being human. And we actually live it. So being human encompasses, like sustainability is a part of being human. It is not, sustainability is not the end all of everything, you know. I'll give you another example. How many of you all sitting here know that every quarter there are roughly about 100 to 150 soldiers who get injured and are in the line of fire? Have you all, has anybody researched that what happens to them once they are decommissioned from these services? Where do they go? These Lance Subedars, the frontline people who are guarding our country go back to their village or their small towns. And when they go back there, they are not able to adjust to that life because they live a life of complete discipline, honor, pride, all of that. We have a special program which we have started with Mr. B.S. Nagesh, who runs Train, and we are recruiting roughly about 50 to 55 frontline injured while on duty soldiers to be a part of our organization, whether they fit in as a store head, whether they fit in as a regional manager or in the HR, or for that matter in any other position through a training program. As we speak, there are 25 Bhil tribe women who are being trained, and I am going to open stores in Madhya Pradesh specifically for them. It's going to be an all-women store, and they are being trained. So for being human, this is what we talk about when we talk about diversity.
Fantastic.
And trust me, I needn't give them their numbers. They come with their numbers and they surpass it every time.
Wow.
That's what we do as an organization.
Fantastic. Let me come to you, Krishna. I mean, as you run one of the largest marketplaces, e-commerce marketplaces in India, what impact does D&I have on organizations' productivity and performance and efficiencies? Have you seen any?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for, it's a pleasure being here actually in this forum. So just wanted to actually call out maybe 2-3 such examples, right, that we've seen at Flipkart. First of all, I think our customer base is extremely diverse. Our reach is over 200-300 million customers now across India, and our goal is to actually get to the next 200-300 million customers. And these customers are coming from very, very diverse backgrounds, a tier 2, tier 3, gender, all types. And therefore, it's very important for us to understand the customer. So it's a core business need in terms of how we see inclusion and diversity in the company. And one of those is, I'll talk about an example during the pandemic where we actually had to reach essentials to the entire country when everything was shut down. And we had to quickly actually get our grocery service to over 200 cities. And in that process, we had to build something which would appeal to the consumer in small towns as well. And they obviously come from very different backgrounds. English is not their primary language many a time. And I'm not just talking about gender diversity here. We actually had a diverse team within the company, formed of women, different backgrounds, build a voice-assisted grocery app during the pandemic so that we could actually launch it and serve the needs of customers. So it's a very core business need for us. I mean, it's not just for tokenism, right? So from that perspective, that's one example I'd like to talk about. The second is within our supply chain. We actually took this bold sort of experiment, which started out as an experiment, but now is mainstream, is in supply chain traditionally, the gender is very skewed towards male, right? And we took a target to say, how can we actually start driving greater gender diversity in supply chain? And because our reach is across 16,000 pin codes across India, when you touch a woman's life, right, you touch an entire household from that perspective. So when we started employing women, I'm really proud to say now we have entire last mile hubs being run by women, and we also now have hubs which have started out with persons with disabilities, entirely run. And from an operational efficiency and productivity standpoint, they are performing on par or even better than the other hubs. So that's the second example I like to talk about from a supply chain. And finally, from a pure technology standpoint, artificial intelligence itself is something which has reached pretty much every domain now. You talk about banking, you talk about e-commerce. We need to understand that artificial intelligence at the end of the day is powered by data that you feed into the machine, into the computer, right? And if your data has biases, artificial intelligence is going to give you biased answers as well, biased recommendations. So when you have a gender diverse or when you have a very diverse set of data scientists in your team, they start to appreciate what's the kind of data they actually need to feed into the system for it to deliver unbiased results. And that's something we found even with data scientists. We have a large number of women data scientists in Flipkart, And that's another core business need that we are serving. So these are three very different examples.
No, very well said. Krity, if I can bring you in on the same one, what is your take? What have you figured out in Mahindra? How has it impacted?
I like this, Ankit. From a very person sitting next to me talking about artificial intelligence, we have gone into extreme end, which is real estate. And it's very surprising, actually. I mean, you know, our consumers have always been a very diverse group of people. Anybody who's bought a house here will talk about how the women in the family have made a very crucial role in that decision making. But the industry per se has remained very traditional. It is a very male-dominated space because, you know, whether you look at construction sites or even if you look at offices. And I think that's where, as Mahindra Life Spaces, we are really trying to change the equation. One is just the whole Mahindra ethos, and within life spaces, we've started making our short, simple steps actually. And I want to keep talking about that first simple steps because I will not sit here and claim to have stories where we've changed the entire landscape because we're at the very initial stages of that. But for example, financial inclusion is very important for us. A part of our business is value housing. You know, we are not into selling the Lodha type 20 crore apartments. There's a big part of our business which is value housing. And we realize that as we are designing those apartments, we need to kind of look at, you know, the same part of society being a part of our team also. And that actually, we've worked with quite a few organizations to bring that talent in. And we've realized the amazing work that has happened in design efficiencies actually, you know, simple little things that even if it's a 1-bedroom apartment in Thane, the family still wants 2 bathrooms in it because there's one to be attached with your you know, bedroom and the one for the guests. Because the minute you have 2 bathrooms in your apartment, it feels like you have climbed up the ladder of the society. You know, having that small mini balcony now after COVID, I think we are seeing that trend. So I think that example has been tremendous for us. Then the whole generational diversity is very key for us. Because once again, you know, even at the Mahindra group, year on year we run shadow boards, which is actually pulling in younger talent from across the organization and various groups. And many of the Mahindra business ideas have come from shadow group. So one of our last year shadow groups again was gender, financial different organizations and backgrounds to cognitive abilities being different. And they are now speaking to us about sustainability as to what are the next steps. And I think Satish spoke about it, right? That his teenage daughter would not touch a product which is, you know, it's not kind of linking to those values. So this part of our group is actually teaching us, saying how do our products need to be sustainable? Real estate is one of the most polluting industries in the world. So how do you kind of start putting that lens there? So those are a few things which we are realizing that just make common sense. And really one big thing on the agenda is, at the risk of sounding very as if you're doing a bit of an ad there, we're just finding women civil engineers from a construction perspective. Oh my God, if somebody has ideas, please share. I'm saying that as a radio ad in between a conversation, but really, I mean, that's one of the next things we would really love to do.
Sure, fantastic. Chandra, you come from Aditya Birla, which is, you know, highly regarded for its people practices, HR practices, fantastic HR team. What does D&I mean to Aditya Birla Group?
Yeah, see, I would like to talk about the business that I am in. So I look after the chemicals, the VFY, which is our viscose filament yarn, and the insulators businesses. So actually speaking, we are 2 worlds. One is the, you know, the metro city world, which is, you know, Mumbai, Delhi, you know, Hyderabad kind of. And then we have our units in the remote places in India. And here the percentages are very different in terms of diversity. So while in Mumbai getting diversity candidates is not difficult, but in the units it is quite difficult. So I would say that for me and my team, it is a continuous challenge, you know, and we like to say that, you know, you're a large group, you have no challenges, or you have been there, you have done that. But I look at D&I, and that is what I would like to really share, is that you have to keep continuous focus. And I really like what I've heard about diversity, you know, bringing in differently abled people into the organization. But I like to keep the focus on gender diversity, because for me, I don't want to dilute that in my organization. And we have done a lot of work. We have a lot of challenges in getting engineers in the remote units. Like you have said, civil engineers, I'm sure your projects are in metro towns, but imagine for me to get a chemical engineer in a remote unit. So that is my #1 challenge. And getting them at the entry level, we have had some success, but getting them at the middle and senior levels is very challenging. So my team is completely geared towards, first of all, gender diversity. And secondly, from diversity, we are slowly inching into what we call inclusion. So we, earlier we didn't jump into the diversity and inclusion bandwagon, because you have to understand the mindset of my managers. You know, getting them attuned to the concept of diversity itself. And now slowly we have inched into inclusion. And now I call my portfolio as a diversity and inclusion portfolio. And we are building that. And we have done many exciting things, I think we will share at the, in the conversation.
Sure, sure.
Thank
Ajanta,
you.
if I can bring you in, what does D&I mean to JSW Group?
Yeah, so I will, take forward where Krity and Chandra started. Being in the manufacturing space, we are into steel, cement, paints. That is our largest business. And traditionally, as Krity was mentioning, it has been a space where you would hardly find any women, traditionally. So we picked up the journey about 6-7 years ago. And it came from a certain realization. If you see my portfolio, I also manage the learning and development side of it. So when my external facilitators used to come and tell me, Ajanta, I don't see any women in the classes. So what's happening here? And then I think that's from where our internal JSW movement of making this a business priority started, right? And we started with the women themselves. We did career workshops and then started asking them, what is it that keeps you within the organization? And so that was the start of the journey. And today we have reached this place, but many miles to go. We want to build an inclusive organization for women. That is our start point. Again, no tall claims, because our largest plant is situated in a town called Vijayanagar near Bellary, and we need metallurgy engineers. So sourcing metallurgy engineers who are women, so the pool gets smaller and smaller. But what has happened over the last 3 years, we have been able to have a cutting line. So one of the operational lines in 2 of our plants, which is manned completely by women. So those are the transitions we are bringing in. And there are almost, I think, 70 to 80 women who manages a complete line, which was big thing for us. And we are planning to start a mining operation manned by women completely, yeah. So those are the things, and this has been possible because now it has become the leadership priority, the business priority to bring those changes. And unless and until we are making it a business priority, this cannot be done by HR alone, then it becomes only HR push. So that's where we are at JSW Group, and I completely believe it's the kind of industry you are in. Services, banking, we have had women leaders for a very, very long time. So it is also very easy for them to attract women talent. In manufacturing, you wouldn't find any women CEOs or business leaders or plant heads. So the examples created at the top are also very few. Yeah. But I think the journey is on, and the generational diversity is something, again, steel industry, from the ages that we are in, most of our employees now over 50. So aging, retiring, focuses on getting the newer talent. So heavy focus on our graduate engineers from regional engineering college. So these are the 2 areas which we are focusing on, women and the generation. To start.
Thank you for so nicely with examples establishing the the business case for diversity and how you're doing it in your respective organizations. Now let's bring the focus on that, you know, I'm a D&I lead, you know, or I'm the head of HR, you know, I'm doing a lot of initiatives, a lot of programs. How, and then, you know, we made a very important point earlier that what gets measured gets done, right? So how do you measure what are the yardsticks that you have set for yourself to measure the effectiveness of your D&I initiatives and programs? If I can start with you, Krishna.
Sure. So I think, yeah, I won't speak of the standard metrics that probably most companies would talk about in terms of diversity percentages and stuff like that. But I think for me, I look at it from two different dimensions. First is the acquisition piece. First of all, what does your company's brand convey to diverse candidates? Do you have a diverse slate that is applying to your roles in the first place, right? So it's also an indication of what's your brand recall in terms of, you know, how diverse, how inclusive you are as an organization. So we look at diverse slates as from an acquisition standpoint. The second most important thing is, while we have many women leadership programs for career development, we have to move away, according to me, from CSAT, participation rates and things of that nature to actually, is it making a difference on the ground? So the way we look at it is, we look at a metric called the internal fill rate for leadership positions. So how many diverse employees are taking up those positions in the company, right? And that's a very outcome-driven metric. There are a lot of inputs that go into it in terms of, are you eliminating enough biases in the company? What's the quality of your leadership development programs and so forth? So that's a very important metric for us from engagement perspective. The third most is, I would say, the voice of the employee, right? So we have a DEI index that we have, which is basically an index which is formed of multiple questions in terms of how are you experiencing the organization as a person, maybe from a diverse background, and it could be diversity of all forms, right? So we look at that index as well. So these are some of the metrics we look at from a core perspective. Other than this, obviously, we look at diversity overall as a ratio, but we also look at diversity at the leadership level in particular. Okay. And that's a primary metric, and all of these metrics that I spoke about are actually not owned by HR, they are owned by the business. So as along with, I think he talked about at the keynote, is that as part of the metrics of a business leader of a function, these metrics are equitable in terms of importance and priority along with the top line and the bottom line metrics. So that's how we've actually institutionalized.
I hope some of you have made notes. I have made mine. Very interesting insight shared by Krishna. Chandra, if I can bring you in on that one.
Yeah, I think you have touched my favorite topic, and I'm very happy to share what all the metrics we track. So first of all, of course, we track the overall diversity matrices. Okay. Like how many we have at the end of every quarter. Of course, I track monthly matrices. Then we track about how many have applied, how many diversity candidates have applied to a particular job. Then what we have is, we do employer branding. Okay, so we see how many diversity posts we have put up in our LinkedIn, Instagram, and other handles, Twitter handles. So that's the third thing we track. The fourth thing we track is, we look at the annual or, we take the 6 monthly, my colleague does a survey with the women to see their satisfaction on basic infrastructure. You'll be surprised how important that is in factories. My colleague is there, Gautam, who used to be a senior member in my organization. So, are they satisfied with the infrastructure that, their houses, the hostel facilities? You are not going to be surprised that we have young men's hostels. We do not have young women's hostels. Yeah? Young men are not supposed to cook. So, they have, the food being served in their hostels. Young women are supposed to cook. So, there is no food going to their hostel. What happens to our daughters who anyways don't know to cook? Where will they eat tomorrow? Okay, so we are also doing in infrastructure 6 months, we push. We are relentlessly pushing our units. Hostel banao, guest house banao, khana do. You know, this is the kind of thing, and let me tell you, mine is a $2 billion organization which I am heading today in HR. But I as the CHRO do these things on a regular basis with my HR heads. Secondly, we are having our vibes survey, which is your organization health survey. I take the cuts only for the diversity candidates to see their feedback. I do a debrief with them to understand what kind of training programs. I look at, the other things are obvious, I mean everybody does it. Careers, what is their career velocity? Compensation, at what is their compa ratio? You know, how many men are getting promoted versus how many women are getting promoted. And the most heartbreaking, what is their attrition percentage? Yeah, so it's again, you know, it is relentless, detail-oriented work which all of us have to do. If a guy leaves at a junior level in a unit, it will not come to me or my colleague Soni, why don't you wave out, my dear? Yeah. So it will not come to us if a male candidate is leaving. But in any corner of the units, if even a junior diversity female candidate is leaving, I will have to come to know that. Why is she leaving? My colleague and myself will conduct an exit interview to understand how we can prevent this. So lots of matrices, and I know I make my team very miserable with that. But there is more we can do actually. You know, the thing about having at least 50% diversity candidates being put up to managers, that becomes very difficult in our kind of industry. But yeah, those are the, you know, ideal situations going ahead. Campus recruitment. Campus recruitment, I know some of you may be competitors, but I can give out the secret. But we want 50% representation. When we go to, you know, I know my colleagues from Owens Corning are there, but 50% we want representation of women from the campus. And I know at my group level, at the group human resources level, when we go for leadership programs, when we go to the best, you know, IIMs and, you know, institutes of the world, we go even above 50% for our leadership talent. So these are all long answer to your short question. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are all looking forward to the insights. So the easy part of DNI is making the policy, right? The larger, more difficult part is to bring the behavioral change at the ground level, right? How are you just not diverse, but also inclusive as we are talking about? Krity, if I can bring in you on this, how do you bring about a behavioral change in the workforce at a ground level?
So this topic particularly is quite close to my heart because sometimes I wonder, and I don't want to just say it controversially, but sometimes I wonder in the corporate world if we got the equation a little wrong. See, when you have sometimes it feels, and again, just pardon me, it feels that the diversity programs are targeted towards making Krity better. Krity needs to understand. Whereas I think the focus should always been about an inclusive environment. You know, I sometimes still cringe, and they are needed. So I cringe, but I still do it. You know, those women leadership development programs. I'm telling you, I cringe, but I still run them in my organization because I've not been able to find the real answer. So inclusion, I think, is something which I think almost pick up any HR person's priorities for the year. In some form or the other, you're working at it. You know, it is actually about creating that culture. Whether you call the whole concept of psychological safety that got spoken about to anything, it is actually feeling that I can bring myself to work. I don't have to change any aspect of me if I'm in a boardroom meeting kind of stuff, right? So that's where we have started to also spend a lot of time. That journey, if we thought of diversity and numbers was difficult, I think the inclusion one is even more difficult. What we are trying to do, again, I'm not sure right or wrong, we learn our lessons in that journey. We're saying, hey, so we look at customer and customer experience and moments in customer experience. We've taken the same view at our associate journey also. So any employee has a journey within the organization. And yes, you want to do best of work in all aspects, but there are specific moments which are very special to them. And they also differ gender, age, every generation wise. So now we are saying, how can we create inclusion moments? And so what we have as a journey, we've said we've figured out some 3 moments we are saying that we will more and more talk about inclusive moments. So one is just about when you hire and onboard people. So it is about customizing, personalization, and how are you creating that moment there. So that's an inclusive moment, and especially if you're looking at getting talent from various backgrounds, differently abled, different cognitive ability. So those induction programs also need to look different. I can't have this same program being done for everyone. Then we are also talking a lot about our meetings. So whether it's COVID or whatever, the whole meeting dynamics has changed, right? So how are your meetings inclusive? I mean, I still enter a room and I use the word, hi guys. I know it's a very simple thing, but just maybe, make that change. शायद उससे कोई बहुत difference नहीं आएगा, but I think it's the use of inclusive language, which is the third thing we are doing. That's just the policies. हमें भी अभी लगता है कि he and she and that's inclusive language, but the world has gone beyond that. So like I said, inclusive inductions, inclusive meetings, and inclusive language. So we are doing a whole lot of work around that. And naturally, we are talking more and more about unconscious bias in all our various, again, training programs. And even, when you run your specific talent processes, we stop and talk about unconscious bias because we all are biased. I mean, we know that. So that's some of the work we are doing towards inclusion.
Time to move beyond mankind.
Exactly.
If I can bring Chandra in on this one. Chandra, your thoughts on how do we percolate it down and bring a organizational behavior change?
Yeah, so see, we do many training programs. First of all, we do POSH training in a big way. We are doing POSH training not only up to workman level, we are doing up to contract workmen also. I will tell you why. Because I have got young diploma engineers. Diploma engineers, are 18 or 19-year-old women. They are on the shop floor. And they are going to lead these workmen, allocating them the work. These contract labor are actually working under them. Yeah. And unless I give the contract labor POSH training, and imagine when we talk about contract labor POSH training, it has to be, a different language, a different way of explaining to them. So first of all, we are doing POSH training, okay, basic. Secondly, and I will say these are early days, we are doing inclusion training, unconscious bias training, but these are early days. We are just getting there. We are actually coming out of POSH earlier we used to do only for management cadre, and now we have gone up to the last person in the organization. We are going a lot for digital learning. And whenever we launch any digital program, we then try to complete with all the people in the organization. We have recently celebrated the month of March as the D&I month. Earlier March used to be just about women, this thing. We have done D&I, and what we have done is we have shared articles on D&I with all our top leadership, the entire month. One article every day. So slow mindset change. We have formed forums, what is called diversity forums in our organization, and we keep on sharing snippets, and if there are, let's say, 5 diploma engineer girls who are now starting the night shift, we share that story across the organization. So these are the things, small and big, which we do.
Sure, thank you. Let me take the discussion to a slightly different topic, but very important one, right? How does one find balance between meritocracy and diversity? How can the two go hand in hand? Sanjeev, your thoughts on that?
See, for us, of course, as you all are huge leaders in your own spaces, but for us, we are a very small organization. Diversity for us is not only in India, but also in the Middle East, and now we are launching Canada. So it's like we have people from diverse backgrounds, a whole lot of it. And I'll come to the meritocracy part of it. So for us, and being such, how should I say, very, very hard organizations where you work with laborers and, like you said, with construction and all. For us, it's not like that. We are in the fashion industry. We have merchandisers, designers, very creative people coming in. And just to let you know, I mean, we have a very clear policy of recruiting from the LGBTQ space. So much so that I have just launched a whole line of clothing which is gender fluid.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you need to talk. You need to walk the talk. So that's exactly what we are doing. Now, when it comes to meritocracy, and when I work with this entire wide expanse of people who come from various backgrounds, various thought processes, for us, one is getting the diverse culture going and making, and trust me, it's not easy. It's not easy, because what I actually saw was the acceptance level at a employee level, when you get this diverse culture in, is very tough to. Sometimes what happens is they are overtly nice, or and I'm just not talking about women empowerment, having this much percentage of women in your leadership, in your stores. All that is said and done. But when you look at beyond it, when you look at gender fluidity, when you look at all of that, we have to be extremely careful, because most of the time it just crashes. And none of these people are given any special treatments. They are absent, and they don't want it. Trust me, they don't want it. Yeah. They're just like you and me. I have a leader who comes from the LGBTQ space, and we are like, it's very normal. In the fashion space, we literally live and breathe together in that space, and not even once that we have to train people, but yes, at a store level, at a grassroots level, like you said, when you're working on the plant, when you're working with workmen, we also do posh at that level. We also train people, and specifically when it comes to meritocracy, for us it's very, very clear that everybody is being judged basis that. I mean, there's no special treatment that we give, but we are more than happy. I mean, if you all have anybody from diverse backgrounds, please refer them. If they are from the fashion space, we are expanding, we are open, and sometimes it becomes very difficult because it just crashes. We want to do certain good things, but then whatever said and done, somebody was just telling me just day before yesterday that on a Delhi flight, there was this lady who was flying the aircraft, and it seems, I don't know whether I read it somewhere. She was flying the aircraft and went into a turbulence, and the man actually, a thought crossed the man's head. I mean, are you sure this lady will be able to land? Or why does this thought cross your mind? So today, for me, my entire GCC, or for that matter, Canada operations, would probably be taken over and run by a lady from the fashion space. And there's no difference. I mean, we don't have any such discriminations. Of course, you have your rules, and all of that is there. We have somebody who's on tour cannot travel beyond a certain time, but end of the day, they're all judged on what they do.
Sure.
There's no discrimination there.
Krishna, your thoughts in furthering diversity, does meritocracy get impaired anywhere?
Absolutely not. It's an and, actually. I don't think it's an or. And when you actually think about it, in the company, in Flipkart, we have EVP, which is basically every Flipster has to maximize their potential and well-being. And when we talk about that, I think you spoke about that briefly in terms of women leadership programs. For me, it's about creating that equitable environment. And I think it's obviously a very controversial topic. People can debate about this for hours. Why do you have women-specific programs at times in companies? But I believe, at least in Flipkart, we believe that it's around creating that equitable environment. There are unconscious biases. There are other things that come in the way of people getting that equitable environment, and that's what we are trying to do, right? So in all of our metrics, and I gave examples earlier when I spoke about last mile hubs or fulfillment hubs that actually are entirely run by women, the same metrics apply to them as any other function. So we don't differentiate at all, but we obviously look at, Chandra talked about just in terms of pay equity, for instance, right? So those are things that might creep into an organization, so you have to be very conscious about it, but it's always about creating that equitable playing field, and therefore meritocracy is always never compromised. That's the way I think.
Fantastic. So we have Ajanta, Krity, and I'm going to bring a Indian company and a MNC now into the discussion. You know, both of you have worked with MNC companies and now are with Indian conglomerates. Have you seen a difference in D&I practices and it actually being implemented on the ground between a MNC organization and Indian one? I mean, do you think now Indian companies have are at par or better than MNC firms which have been talking about D&I for possibly a longer time than Indian companies? Ajanta.
Sure. So I worked with Vodafone before I joined JSW. One thing I strongly believe that MNC in India and MNC, if you're global situated outside, those are two different stories. A corporate culture is kind of a manifestation of the society that we live in, right? So our line managers, our senior leaders are a manifestation of where they are coming from, their upbringing, their value system, their biases. And they bring that with them within the organization that they are working in. And with all kind of matrices that we put in, especially, and we are only talking about women gender, especially in the industry that I'm in today, those biases play out. Doesn't matter how much we push. When it comes to a promotion decision, a line manager from where he is coming from. So that remains. So to your question, MNC or Indian company, I think it's the kind of industry you are in, the kind of business you are in, right? Flipkart, it wouldn't matter in an e-commerce platform whether that's based out of India or it's a global organization, right? E-commerce would have a different kind of mindset because it attracts a different kind of talent. So yes, MNC, the thrust is much more because they will always have a region, a group, a global entity, and the global entity would always push for numbers. And I have seen that playing out in my previous company at Vodafone, where there was a lot of thrust on numbers. We need women, and this should be a percentage. Unfortunately, we did not have the right ecosystem or environment at that point of time. And hence, women joined, but they left at the same pace, right? And HR was going mad in getting those recruitment numbers. We need zone heads, we need business heads, and that was a different story. At JSW, again, the industry that I am in, it's a very, very different, tonality that we bring in. So yes, I think manufacturing, and I have been speaking, we have something called, Steel Council, where steel companies across the world, we meet once a year and we talk about it. So, there was my Chinese counterpart, and the story is the same there. Yeah, in Japan, the story is the same there. But again, when you go to the European countries, in steel, manufacturing units, you will have. So I was speaking to one of my colleagues who is working in Kazakhstan in ArcelorMittal, and then he told me, 40% of my manufacturing or operations line are led by women. So again, society, the country which we are in, makes a lot of difference into what kind of diversity and inclusion we are bringing in. So it's less to do with the MNC or Indian, but more to do with the larger environment.
Got it. Krity, can I have your perspective?
I would actually agree with Ajanta. I think if we're talking of culture, everything is we're talking of culture, and that then gets dependent on, which part of the world you're working in. When I was working in Tesco and looking after the small convenience formats, I mean, the conversations were still the same, but you were more talking about the ethnic diversity there, right? So, how do you build that more in the stores? And you make your stores look ethnically diverse than male, pale, brown kind of stuff, right? So that was happening. And that's where I again think the inclusion conversation actually binds us all together. Diversity can mean different things depending on which industry, which part of the globe that you work. I would still say that because now the global organizations, because they have been global, right? So they woke up to these challenges and questions way before maybe some of us started looking. They naturally have dialed up the volume much more in that we are dialing up now. Again, my previous employer, Tesco, now needs to put that pay parity data up on their website. We don't have such regulations. I'm not even thinking in that direction. Some of my challenges, like Chandra has been saying, are very basic challenges. So like I said, they have definitely dialed up the volume. We can look at that and learn from it. At the same time, there are many places where I think we've done better. I think as a country, some of the cultural differences, that cultural richness is so much that that's a good part of us, right? I don't look at you saying, aap Maharashtra se hain, aap Bangalore se hain. That's just very natural for us. Maybe they have to think more about ethnic diversity in a way that they have not looked. So I think learn from each other, turn up the volume from, as they've done in the West. And just keep, like you've been saying, keep relentlessly, I've taken that word from you, keep just working at it relentlessly.
Yeah, I have an eye on time, so, and I want everybody to participate into this discussion. So, one last question before I open it to the audience, and please have your questions ready. So what is your D&I goal for 2022 or for your company, right? So to say your D&I resolution. Quick, short, if I can start with Sanjeev.
If you ask me honestly, we don't have one because it's every day. I mean, it's like we have charters which we do in terms of how much of women empowerment. I mean, if you was talking about Tesco stores, and we are launching 15 stores with only women manpower to be run completely. So like that, we don't have any such thing, but we have a very large goal in terms of working on the diversity piece, and we're just getting started. So yeah, so that's what I would like to say now.
So Ajanta, one, as a torch bearer, as a champion of D&I, one goal that you set for yourself or for your organization?
Yes, so it's a very simple goal, have more women in the middle and senior management.
Have more?
More women in mid to senior management.
Mid to senior management, fantastic.
Yeah,
Chandra?
this is also, we have a 3 years goal that we want to double the number of women in 3 years.
In workforce or management, top management?
We can say management.
Management.
Not top management, but overall management cadre.
Fantastic. Krity?
This one thing keeps me up in the night. I just want a women construction team. I just want more women in construction. That's all I want.
Okay.
God, give me one.
Let's work towards that. Krishna?
Yeah, I think it was more of a public commitment we made as each leader in Flipkart. So we talked about every leader should hire one, grow many, and sponsor one. Yeah. And we said we put this public pledge out, and we'll measure the metrics as we move forward.
Fantastic. Hire one, grow many, sponsor one.
Yeah.
Fantastic. On that note, can we have a round of applause for all our panelists?